is much sorrow in the world, much about which we concern ourselves on a daily basis. And now it is finally summer. And so what better day for us to spend a time together just celebrating the beauty and wonder of nature in flowers. One of my small indulgences during these years in Madison has been to have fresh flowers in my apartment as much as possible. In the summer and in the fall, they come from the farmer's market, luscious and bright bouquets of zinnias and daisies and statice, bought mostly from serious Hmong women whose boots later sport gladiolas and later still sunflowers and mums as well. In October of my first year here, I discovered the flowers at Trader Joe's as they came in the hands of my sweet husband with bottles of 3-buck chuck and frozen organic blueberries. I have, as so many of you also, I suspect, always loved fresh flowers. When I was a child living on our island, there were 3 pin cherry trees that bloomed in clouds of tiny white blossoms, yellow and purple irises that grew between rocks, wild roses and tiger lilies, and lilies of the valley, and best of all, on the North Point where there had been a fire years before I was born that left only juniper and blueberries, a sea of white and yellow daisies. In later summers, there was a patio added with flower beds that my mother would fill with zinnias and gloriosa daisies and marigolds, and window boxes with red and white geraniums and sprays of blue dianthus. In the woods across the road from our house where we spent winters, there was each spring a patch of moccasin flowers, the state flower of Minnesota. I remember being told in no uncertain terms that I was never to pick a moccasin flower, and if I saw someone else do it, I was to tell a grown-up. I believe they were endangered species and needed to be guarded and protected. In the years that followed, there were flowers in corsages and orchids and roses and wedding flowers, calla lilies in December and daisies and alstroemeria in July, and funeral sprays of carnations and gladiolas and yellow roses whose presence elsewhere still triggers memories of joy and sorrow. I suspect that many of you here has a life story that can be told in flowers. Some of them came to me some of these come to me when I forget the power of symbols. In my first year of ministry, I received an urgent phone call in the middle of March from an infrequent visitor, or attender to the church, a widow in her 80s at the time. She would like to come to church on Easter, she said, but would not do so if there were to be Easter lilies in the church. It had not occurred to me to wonder myself, though in that first year there were many surprises that came out of uncommunicated tradition. The woman explained to me that she had lost a child at Easter time, nearly 50 years earlier, and the funeral was held there in the first Unitarian church, and the sanctuary had been filled with Easter lilies. The memory was still so fresh that she could not bear the least suggestion of lilies. The language of flowers, sometimes called floriography, can speak volumes, though the message is often oblique. In the Victorian era, it was a means of communication in which various flowers and floral arrangements were used to send coded messages, allowing individuals to express feelings which otherwise could not be spoken. Like any language, it can lead to misunderstanding if the meanings are not shared. Around the propane tank in our house in Minnesota, the previous owners planted tall-stemmed flowers that we were told were delphinium. They grew rich in a abundant, and we were able to cut many bouquets and still barely see the tank. On our way to a friend's birthday party, my husband cut a dozen stems and put them in a vase to offer as a part of our gift. They were gratefully received and stood proudly on the table with the other offerings. The next day, our friend called to report that one of the other guests had taken her aside after we had left the party and asked indignantly why John and Karen had given her a bouquet of monkshood for her birthday. Monkshood, she said, is a poisonous plant. No, my friend said, I don't plan to eat it. But how will you dispose of it? I will throw it in the trash. Do you think that will be safe? The next day, my friend, concluding that we had made the offering out of ignorance rather than malice, called the local florist. I received a bouquet of monkshood for my birthday, she said. Oh my, said the florist. Aren't they beautiful? Yes, my friend said, but I hear they're poisonous. I'll leave you eat them, said the florist. How should I dispose of them? Asked my friend. You should throw them in the trash. If we had intended a death wish, the symbol would have failed. One should not always heed the language of flowers. And yet, confident enough of the power and universality inherent in the presence of flowers, we invoke it here at First Unitarian Society on a number of occasions. Weddings and memorial services routinely feature flowers of many kinds, often chosen for the symbolic value attached by personal experience or by a meaning assigned to them by some errant choreographer. We invite you to offer altar flowers in honor or memory of some date or event in your life or the life of your family. Today, these flowers are in the vase that is part of our partner church program, which we are featuring as part of our service today. And the sunflowers grow in abundance in Pennsylvania. An occasion noted on the back of the order of service when flowers are donated lets the rest of our community know. And for that time, the joy of celebration or sorrow of loss becomes part of the aesthetic that is shared by all of us who are here. And joy is expanded and the burden of sorrow redeemed briefly by beauty. When we dedicate our children here, we traditionally give each child a red rose with the thorns removed, the symbol of the world that we would offer our children if it were in our power. Traditionally associated with true love, the red rose is chosen for this ceremony for the unmistakable power of its beauty, a symbol of the love that creates and sustains life. When our children come of age, we offer them that symbol again with the thorns in place, symbol of the world's realities, which we now entrust them to engage with tools we have given them and with the love that continues to sustain them through our community. And each spring, we share in the ritual of flower communion. Each year, we are reminded of the origin of this tradition, which was created by Norbert Čapek, whose hymn we just sang, who founded the Unitarian Church in Czechoslovakia. He introduced this special service to the church on June 4th, 1923. For some time, he had felt the need for some kind of symbolic ritual that would bind people together. The format had to be one that would not alienate anyone who had forsaken other religious traditions. The traditional Christian communion service based on bread and wine was unacceptable to the members of his congregation because of their strong reaction against the Catholicism of the time. And so he turned to the native beauty of the countryside for elements of communion, which would be genuine for them. The simple service was a result, It was such a success that it was held yearly just before the summer recess of the church. The flower communion was brought to the United States in 1940 and introduced to members of our Cambridge, Massachusetts church by Dr. Chapek's wife, Maya Chapek. The Czech-born Maya met Norbert Chapek in New York City while he was studying for his PhD, and it was at his urging that Norbert left the Baptist ministry and turned to Unitarianism. The Chapeks returned to Czechoslovakia in 1921 and established the Dynamic Church in Prague. Maya Chapek was ordained in 1926, and it was during her tour of the United States that Maya introduced the flower communion, which had been developed in the Prague Church, and she introduced it at the Cambridge Church. Unfortunately, Maya was unable to return to Prague due to the outbreak of World War II, and it was not until the war was over that Norbert Chapek's death in a Nazi concentration camp was revealed. From this beginning, the service has spread now to many of our Unitarian Universalist congregation and has been adapted along the way. Norbert Chapek chose flowers. I sometimes think about the layers of symbolism that are embedded in this ritual. The beauty of flowers that is thus far so resilient, asserting itself each season in spite of whatever else has happened in the lives of the humans with whom they share the planet. Flowers showing up as exactly who they are, like the roses beneath Emerson's window that make no reference to former roses or to better ones. Flowers, a sustaining source of beauty that both welcomes and defies attempts at cultivation. Wild daisies and scrappy dandelions popping up to take the place of more genteel species. Clover and black-eyed Susans laughing like sassy peasants, returning again and again after repeated mowings. Regardless of what language that you project onto them, flowers carry within their presence all the beauty and strength and fragility of life and the ever-present knowledge of death. I remember wondering once about the use of cut flowers as symbols because they die the moment they are cut. They are, in some sense, a kind of ritual sacrifice. And yet, brides and widows dry flowers that hold moments of love. From time to time, unsuspecting browsers of old books come across a bud or a blossom, pressed between pages with no more explanation than an oblique connection to a word or phrase. We put flowers in water to maintain the illusion of life, to bring inspiration close, to enhance the aesthetic of space. Some, like chrysanthemums and carnations and alstroemeria, can stay beautiful for weeks, while iris and dandelions often droop within hours. Potted plants, some say, not the same, say I. And so, in a ritual as sacred as church, my husband and I have these past 6 years put our faded cut flowers beneath the tree behind our house, or beneath the hedge alongside the deck, where like the moccasin flowers in Mary Oliver's poem, they shuffle forward into the floor of darkness and become trees. So on this day, we share the gift of flowers in all their beauty and diversity, gathered here in front of us, even as we gather as a diverse and beautiful community. This ritual reminds us not only of the power in the present, but of our long history of adapting and honoring the spirit of our religious ancestry. By exchanging flowers, we show our willingness to walk together in search for truth, disregarding all that that might divide us. This communion of sharing is essential to a free people, to a free religion. Blessed.